The first thing Captain Elias Wren felt upon waking was weight warm, steady, and far too deliberate to be the result of a fallen blanket or a malfunctioning gravity field. Years in the Terran Expeditionary Corps had conditioned him to rouse instantly at the slightest disturbance, but this was unusual. His instincts screamed for him to open his eyes and assess the situation, but he took a breath first, gauging his surroundings in that still half-dreaming haze. The air carried a faint metallic tang, the scent of brask-fours. Filtration system struggling to keep the ever-present dust storms at bay. Somewhere far off, the colony's windbreaks groaned under another gust. His quarters were small, just one hab module out on the edge of the mining sector. No one should have been here except him. And yet, someone was. When he finally opened his eyes, he found himself staring into a pair of alien ones, large, amber, and unblinking. They were close, much closer than was comfortable, their faintly luminous irises reflecting the soft glow from the viewport behind her. She was on top of him at first glance. Her body language could have been read as threatening her weight braced. Over his chest, her long, four-fingered hands pressed into the bedding on either side of him. But there was no crushing force, no immediate aggression. She held herself just above him, balanced in a way that spoke of both control and readiness. Elias knew her face, if face, was the right word for a being with slightly elongated features and the faint trace of patterned scales along her cheekbones. Her name was Lyra, and she was supposed to be his new housekeeper. He'd hired her 2 standard weeks ago through a staffing agency that specialized in off-world domestic help. The listing had been sparse, vague even, but Brask 4 wasn't exactly overflowing with skilled labor, and he had assumed her duties would be limited to keeping his living quarters in order, managing the supplies, and maybe insuring his equipment. Didn't collect more dust than absolutely necessary. Clearly, his assumptions had been incomplete. "I could ask why you're on me," Elias said slowly, keeping his voice level, "but I get the feeling the answer's either going to impress me or make me very, very concerned." Her gaze never wavered. If anything, her pupils narrowed slightly, a sign he recognized from Kivari physiology focus sharpening to a point. "Stay still," she murmured. Her voice was low, almost musical, but carried a tension beneath it, like a taut wire ready to snap. "It's not time to move yet." Elias's mind ran through possibilities. Was she restraining him, protecting him, waiting for something? His training told him that waking to find someone pinning you down was never a good sign, but something in her posture was wrong for an attack. She was listening, not to him, to something else, then he heard it, a faint, distant sound, not mechanical, not part of the usual colony hum. It was a dull, metallic thump from outside the habitat, followed by the faintest tremor under his bed. His breath slowed. That was no natural noise. It was the sound of something touching the hull. Testing it. "What is that?" he asked. Instead of answering, Lyra tilted her head, amber eyes still locked on his face. "There's a reason you hired me, Captain," she said at last. "And it has nothing to do with cleaning your floors." Before he could question further, the sound came again, louder this time. A deliberate scrape, slow and methodical, moving along the outer wall. Elias's chest tightened. He knew that sound. It was the sound of something or someone scouting for a weak point in the structure. Lyra's weight shifted off him in one smooth motion, and for the first time Elias saw the curved blade strapped at her hip. It was unlike anything in his own arsenal, slender, with a faint shimmer along the edge, as though the air around it vibrated. She moved like she'd been waiting for this moment all along. "They've found us," she said. Elias swung out of bed, his feet hitting the cold metal floor as he reached for his utility trousers and the sidearm holstered within. "Who?" he demanded, Veshk hunters, she replied without hesitation. And they won't leave until they have your head. He glanced at Lyra. She wasn't just ready, she was poised. Her curved blade angled downward in a stance that was both defensive and predatory. I'm going to ask again, Elias said, voice low. Who are the Veshk, and why are they here? For me? Her amber eyes flicked to him briefly. They're professional hunters, not beasts thinkers. Every strike they make is calculated. Every movement has purpose. They take contracts for prey too dangerous for lesser killers. That's flattering, Elias muttered, checking the power level on his pistol. But I haven't exactly been broadcasting my location. They don't need you to, she replied. Once your scent or your reputation gets into their networks, they'll hunt until either they die or you do. A deep, reverberating clang echoed through the room, silencing both of them. This time, it wasn't from the wall, it was from above, where the habitat's curved ceiling met the reinforced supports. Lyra's eyes narrowed. They're testing for weak points in multiple places. They'll breach soon. How soon? Elias asked Dot. She didn't answer with words. She moved Dot in one smooth motion. She slipped toward the door, tapping a control on her wrist device. The interior lights dimmed to a red combat glow, shadows dancing across the narrow corridors. The hum of the air recyclers deepened into a low growl as emergency systems came online. Elias followed, his steps silent on the metal floor. He had fought in war zones where surprise meant death. But there was something different about this, an opponent he couldn't see. Only here, drawing closer with each passing second. The next sound made him freeze, a slow, almost delicate scratching. Like talons on glass, moved from one end of the wall toward the door. It stopped directly outside. Step back, Lyra ordered, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. He obeyed, moving to the side of the entry panel, pistol raised. Then the wall exploded inward. A mass of chitin and segmented limbs burst. Through the plating, shards of alloy scattering across the floor. Its body was sleek and insectoid, armor plates catching the red light in jagged reflections. It stood on 4 limbs but used 2 more like arms, each ending in a curved, razor-like claw. Its head tilted toward Elias, multiple black eyes locking onto him. The hunter hissed, though the sound was more like grinding metal than breath. Elias fired twice without hesitation. The blue bolt struck its chest, leaving smoking scorch marks, but the creature didn't slow. It launched itself forward with terrifying speed. That was when Lyra struck. She intercepted the Veshk mid-leap, her curved blade flashing in a blur. The air hummed as the weapon's vibrating edge sliced clean through the creature's forelimb. The severed limb clattered to the ground, twitching. The Veshk let out a deafening screech, the sound vibrating in Elias's teeth. She didn't stop there. Her movements were precise, surgical, her strikes aimed not to kill quickly, but to dismantle, to break the creature's ability to fight. Within seconds, it lay crumpled against the wall, still alive but incapacitated. Elias exhaled, lowering his pistol slightly. You fight like someone who's been killing them for years, she finished, stepping over the fallen. Veshk without a second glance. The reprieve lasted only moments. A second screech erupted from the other side of the breach, followed by the heavy thud of something far larger approaching. Elias raised his pistol again. How many? A pack, she said. 3, maybe 4. If they brought an alpha, it's worse. An alpha? She glanced at him, her voice deadly calm. The one that doesn't just kill you, it makes you wish it had. The second Veshk burst through the breach, claws snapping. Elias fired, catching it in the side of the head. It staggered but didn't fall until Lyra's blade found the joint between its armored neck plates. The body slumped to the floor. For a moment, there was only the sound of their breathing and the faint hiss of the environmental systems. struggling to compensate for the breach. The emergency seals hissed faintly, warning of air pressure loss. Elias glanced at her, finally asking the question he'd been holding back. "You knew this was coming. You knew before you ever set foot here." Elias knew that in combat, moments of stillness could be more dangerous than the fight itself. They meant the enemy was adapting, thinking Dot and the Veshk were thinkers. The breach in the wall was still open, despite the emergency field's faint shimmer, a thin energy barrier meant to keep air in, not predators out. Dust swirled at its edges, sucked in by the pressure difference. Lyra moved first, her steps precise and deliberate as she scanned the perimeter. Her blade was still humming, the faint vibration carrying into the air. She paused, glanced at the shadows shifting beyond the breach, then looked back at him. "Stay close," she ordered. Before he could respond, the next attack came not from the breach itself, but from above it. With a shriek of tearing alloy, a Veshk dropped from the ceiling, using the weakened hull supports as a bridge. Elias pivoted, raising his pistol, but the creature's speed was unreal. It hit the floor in front of him with a crash, claws slicing deep grooves into the metal. Its head snapped toward him, black eyes gleaming, and Elias fired. The first bolt went wide too fast to track. The second hit the thing's leg, forcing it to stumble. That was all the opening Lyra needed. She moved like water over stone, smooth, unyielding. Her blade struck in a clean diagonal arc, slicing through the Veshk's joint with a crackling hiss. The alien roared, but she didn't hesitate. She drove her weapon forward, piercing between its armored plates, right into the core beneath. The hum of the blade deepened, and the creature's body convulsed before collapsing. Elias had seen good soldiers before, people who could turn the tide of a fight. But Lyra wasn't just skilled. She was built for this. Her every movement was efficient, as though each muscle had been shaped by years of practice against this exact kind of enemy. He stepped up beside her, eyes still on the breach. "You've fought them before." "Hundreds of times," she said, without looking at him. "Kevari guardians are trained for one purpose, to keep the hunted alive." "Hunted like me," he said grimly. Her tail flicked, once a sign he was learning meant agreement. "The Veshk take pride in their kills. If they fail, their honor demands they keep hunting until they succeed. And the more times they fail," she paused, scanning the dust outside, "the more they commit to ending you." The faint hum of the emergency seal wavered for just a moment, and that was all the warning they got. Two more. Veshk lunged through the breach at once. Elias dropped into a crouch, firing at the closer one. The bolt hit center mass, burning a smoking hole into its armor but not stopping it. He rolled to the side as it slammed into the wall where he'd been standing. The second one went for Lyra. She blocked its strike with the flat of her blade, the clash ringing through the room like metal on a tuning fork. The creature reared back to strike again, but she ducked low, sweeping its legs out from under it before driving her blade into the exposed joint at its neck. Elias aimed and fired at the first Veshk again, this time catching it in the side of the head. It staggered backward, black ichor spilling across the floor, and collapsed. When the last body hit the ground, the only sound left was the hiss of the emergency seal and the ragged rhythm of their breathing. Elias scanned the floor for dead. Veshk, each one a reminder that this was far from over. "They'll keep coming," Lyra said, voice calm but edged with certainty. "The breach is a beacon. Every hunter within range will converge here now." "Then we seal it," Elias said. "Temporarily." She corrected. "But first," she knelt beside one of the corpses, slicing a small device from the base of its neck. It was no larger than a coin, but the tiny red light blinking on it told Elias exactly what it was. "A tracker," he muttered. "They've marked you," she said. "They'll know where you are, anywhere you go." As he crouched beside her, Elias realized something. This wasn't just an attack. This was a hunt that had already been in motion long before he hired her. The Veshk hadn't stumbled onto his trail. They'd been following it for a long time, and Lyra had been following them. For the first time since waking to find her on top of him, Elias understood that her presence here was no coincidence. She hadn't just been assigned. She had chosen to be her dot, and if the glint in her amber eyes was anything to go by, she had no intention of letting the hunt end in the Veshk's favor. The wind outside howled against the habitat's hull, carrying with it the ever-present grit of Brask-4's dust storms. Inside, the air tasted faintly of scorched alloy and burnt ozone from the firefight. Elias crouched over the breach, running, the tip of his fusion welder along the jagged edge. Sparks sprayed against his boots as he sealed the panel. The job wouldn't hold forever, but it would buy them time, minutes, maybe an hour at best. Behind him, Lyra moved like a shadow, scanning the perimeter with a device that looked older than both of them combined. It pulsed in her hand with a low, resonant hum, the amber light from its display reflecting in her eyes. She was silent, but Elias could tell from her posture, tail twitching, head slightly lowered, that her mind was working through more than just immediate threats. When he finally broke the silence, his voice carried the weight of suspicion. "You knew this was coming." Lyra didn't even flinch. "Yes." He set down the welder and turned to face her. "You took this job knowing the Veshk would follow me here, knowing they'd come for my life." "I accepted this contract because of that," she said simply. Elias stared at her for a moment, searching her face for any hint of mockery. There was none. "You're not making a lot of sense." Her gaze met his without wavering. "Do you think I clean habitation units for a living, Captain? That my hands are made for dusting shelves?" She held up one clawed hand, the curved talons catching the light. "I am a Kivari guardian. My order does not protect the weak or the helpless. We protect the dangerous, the hunted, the ones whose removal would shift the balance of whole sectors." Elias almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think I'm that important?" "I know you are," she replied without hesitation. "Your file in our archives is thorough. Former Terran Expeditionary Corps decorated in the siege of Charon 5, the ghost of Relith, the human soldier who vanished when the war ended." The nickname made his shoulders tense. "That's not a name I gave myself." "No," she agreed. "It's the name the Veshk use when they speak of you. They do not speak it often." He crossed his arms, the weight of old memories settling like stone in his chest. "Charon 5 was a lifetime ago. I left that life behind." "But it hasn't left you," Lyra said. Her voice was calm, but it carried a certainty that cut deeper than any accusation. "The Veshk do not forget those who have humiliated them. You cost their clans prestige, territory, and lives. For them, killing you is not merely a job, it's an act of restoration." Elias glanced toward the sealed breach. "And you? What? You just happened to be nearby and decided to offer your services?" Her mouth curved into the barest shadow of a smile. "I volunteered for the assignment. There were others who would have taken the contract, but they were insufficient." "Insufficient?" he echoed. "They would have failed. You would be dead. And that is unacceptable." "Unacceptable to who?" he asked. "To me," she sighed, her tone softening in a way that made him pause. "And to the Kivari Order. We are bound by oath to ensure that certain individuals survive whether they wish to or not." That last part made his brow furrow. "And I don't get a say in this?" "You had a say," she said, stepping closer. "You hired me. Whether you knew the truth or not, you made the choice." Elias exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of her words. It was true. When he'd skimmed through the agency's list of available workers, her name and file had stood out. Something about her had seemed different, capable, dangerous in a way that promised she could handle Brask 4's rough edges. He hadn't realized she was here to handle his dot as the wind outside began to fade into the low moan of a calmer front. Lyra glanced back at her scanner. The next wave is still coming. They've called reinforcements. We have perhaps 20 minutes before they arrive. Then we move, Elias said automatically, but Lyra shook her head. No, if we run, they will track us. We stand here, we end this pack, and we send a message. Elias met her gaze. A message? Her smile widened just enough to show the Chidashuda, faint points of her teeth, that the ghost of Relith is not prey, and that anyone who comes for him will regret it. Before he could speak, the sound of faint scratching and clicking echoed from the far wall, followed by a muted thud. Jason froze. That sound? He'd heard it once before during the Varkos siege on Tharsis Station. A kind of sound you never forgot. Metal claws against composite wall plating. Alara spoke without looking at him. Stay still, Commander. Her voice was calm, steady, completely at odds with the situation. Jason realized her weight pressing him down wasn't to trap him, it was to keep him from bolting upright into danger. Her left hand was clutching a short-blade vibro knife, the kind used in close-quarters combat. The other hand was braced, ready to strike. A moment later, the wall panel near the floor bulged inward, and a triangular seam split open, revealing a thin, chitinous limb sliding through. Jason's heart pounded. Somehow, an Aetheric scout had infiltrated the safe house. The creature slithered halfway inside before Alara moved fast enough to make Jason's eyes struggle to track her. She leapt from him, blade flashing in a precise arc, severing the alien's probing limb at the joint. The Aetherics emitted a high-pitched screech and recoiled into the wall. But Alara didn't give it the chance to retreat fully. She slammed her boot against the panel, forcing it open enough to drive the blade deep into the alien's thorax. The twitching stopped. Jason slowly sat up, still processing what had happened. The Aetherics weren't just random threats, they were hunters, known for targeting specific individuals, often using stealth rather than open assault, which meant this hadn't been a coincidence. Alara cleaned the blade on the edge of the bedspread, before finally turning to face him. "That's why I was on top of you," she said simply. As though this had been an entirely normal morning routine, Jason's voice came out low. "You knew they'd come for me." "I suspected," she admitted. "The Aetherics have a long memory. You destroyed their breeding nests on Dravos 4. That made you a priority mark." She paused, then added, "When I took this job, I wasn't applying to clean. I was applying to keep you alive." Jason felt his pulse slow as the realization settled in. From the moment she'd arrived, Alara had been doing far more than domestic work. Every seemingly casual glance at the door seals, every subtle movement to stand where she could cover a line of sight, every early morning patrol of the hallway, it had all been preparation for this. But why hide it? Jason asked. Why? Not tell me from the start? She shrugged faintly, her eyes scanning the now broken wall panel one more time before sheathing her blade. Because if I told you, you would have doubled security, stayed on edge, and altered your routine. The Aetherics would have noticed, adapted, and possibly struck harder. This way they thought you were vulnerable, predictable. Jason gave a short, dry laugh. Bait. Exactly, she said without a hint of apology. The rest of the day passed in a tense calm. The body of the Aetheric scout was collected by a discreet military retrieval team, and Jason spent the afternoon reviewing the building surveillance footage with Alara. What struck him most wasn't just how capable she was, but how unshakable. There had been no panic, no hesitation. She'd acted with precision that only came from years of dealing with lethal threats. That night, as the two of them sat by the fire, Jason finally said, "You weren't really a housekeeper, were you?" Her lips quirked in the faintest smile. I was what you needed me to be. You just didn't know what that was until today. Jason leaned back, watching the flames dance in the hearth. He understood now why he'd hired her, even if the reason had been hidden beneath layers of ordinary tasks. She wasn't there to sweep floors or fold laundry. She was there to stand between him and the things that wanted him dead. And the strangest part was, he felt no resentment about the deception, only gratitude. Because in that split second, when fit to not split second, when that split second, when the wall had split open, when death had reached for him, Elara had been exactly where she needed to be, on top of him, shielding him from the first strike.